to the next edition of the DFS Down Under show. Smatho and Big Hef here from Daily Fantasy Rankings with another action-packed fantasy show for all the viewers on our YouTube channel and all of our readers on dailyfantasyrankings.com.au, your number one source for daily fantasy in Australia. Hef, how are you today, mate?
I'm flat, Smatho. I'm real flat at the moment, actually. No, I'm a big Eagles man. It was not bad enough we've lost Shuey, Yo, Redden, Sheed. Old Jerry McGovern's just done a hamstring as well. So terrible times if you're a West Coast supporter at the moment. But you'll probably cheer me up with some tales tonight, I reckon, Smatho.
Oh, yes, we've got a lot to get through in the show tonight. But just a quick question. Do you reckon the Eagles are actually going to make the finals?
They'll make the finals.
Oh, jeez. You've got only half a side left.
They make. I think GWS losing to Adelaide was a good result for them. I think they get in anyway now, don't they?
They should do.
I don't think they'll do much damage there because, like you say, they got half a side and Bubba Ainsworth and bloody the hopeless Brayshaw brothers getting a game. There's not much hope for us, but oh well. There's always next year.
There's always next year, and there's also other sport going on around the world at the moment. A quick look at the Draft Stars lobby today. It shows that 9 sports are available for daily fantasy on the site, which they came out and said today it's a record for their site. So if you're over the AFL, you've got plenty of other choices to get into. So
no such thing, Smatho.
Oh, now the one particular one that usually gets the attention of fantasy players is the NFL. Week 1 starting on Friday morning. DFR will be back for articles and previews throughout the season. And look, if you are watching the show before the kickoff of Week 1 on the NFL, get onto DFR's Twitter handle at RankingsDFS. We have a contest ticket giveaway for the $5 million fantasy football contest on DraftKings. Simply jump onto the Twitter, like and retweet the tweet itself, and try and have a guess on how many total points will be in the game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Houston Texans. So, yeah, 10 a.m. before, get your entry in, and you never know, you might be able to get a contest entry in the DraftKings Millie Maker on Monday morning. Now, also, Hef, this is your wheelhouse here. SportChamps, Australia's number one tournament betting site. They're back. Massive spring racing coming up, and obviously this is your domain here, mate. So what got my attention today, actually, I was having a poke around the site, and they have on Saturday for the Metro Meets and Racings, they have a $20 entry for a $10,000 guaranteed contest, and it's a money back special. So it's effectively, $20. If you don't get in the cash, you get your entry back in bonus cash. If not, you're in the prize money. You actually make more than your $20. It's a free swing, so to speak. So, mate, talk about what's actually going to be happening on Saturday in terms of the races. What are we looking forward to?
Well, I actually didn't know that one, Smatho, so that's a bloody great deal. If you haven't played SportChamps, it's actually a lot of fun. You can really start to bet up with all the play money you have and get stuck in. As well, you've given me a bit of a rap there on the racing. I'm a bit of a local specialist these days, but I have been following along with the Melbourne as we're getting into the spring carnival, and it's a ripper meeting on Saturday. We've got Russian Camelots back. We've got the Maccabi Divas, just a superb race. There's probably like a good quality 6, 7, 8 races there. Acadia Queen's back against Savatiano. It's a ripper card. So what a great way to get your eye in. Just get a feel for these SportChamps tournaments again with a free swing.
Now, I'm going to put up a couple of your selections on the screen here because you've written them in your notes here tonight. Tell us about a couple of tips you might want to throw in this particular tournament.
All right, take these at your own risk. But there's race 2, there's a horse called Immortal Love, which was a really good winner first up a couple of weeks ago against a couple of pretty smart horses in Flying Award and Tagaloa. So it did win a race on wet ground. I think the rain's coming on Saturday, Smatho, so we've got to be aware of that. It won a race on wet ground back when it was a 2-year-old, this horse. I think it's going to be really hard to beat Immortal Love. And then in the main race, race 7, I think Fierce Impact's down from Sydney. Has a really good record in these big mile races. Very good run first up. I think everyone will get carried away with Russian Camelot, but this isn't quite his go. If they don't beat him on Saturday, they'll never beat him. So I'm going to go with Fierce Impact.
Nice. That's chips in. Race 7, Fierce Impact. I
No,
like
it's
it.
not chipped in. Feel your way around. And
Now,
spend up your play money on Sport Champs. Get yourself a big lead.
Now I've popped the link to Sports Champs in the description to this YouTube video, so make sure you subscribe to that and make sure you read the description of this video to enter the Sports Champs tournament. As always, look, there's a lot of buy-in levels, including free contests if you're not quite too sure how the platform works. If you're already a member as well, just make sure you check out the variety of tournaments they have these days. The targets, the boosted targets, the bloodbaths, if you're time poor, you've got half an hour to an hour. If you've got all day, you've got all day. It's a great platform, Sports Champs. And here at DFR, we'll be certainly giving the love this coming spring. All right, Hef, let's move on to Smatho's 2 thumbs up.
I'm excited for this one, Smatho.
Oh, look, there's been some great activity, some great nominations for this thumbs up this week. And obviously, there are some familiar names who put their hands up for nominations for the 2 thumbs up. Blokes like Procession, who's just been on fire. Chris Eddy just comes back from nowhere and takes out a slate on Monday, I do believe. Penny One Cent, Esby with a single bullet. Willian, Bradley Pike, who gave us a little shout out on DFR. Well done to you, mate. Reicht One, which we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. He's been playing pretty well, so he won another slate. Half Decent is back. He's more than half decent. So he's got another win on DK. But the thumbs up this week goes to the number 3 ranked DFM member at the moment, Brody 4 from Western Australia, who's actually had multiple back-to-back wins. And alone last night, Wednesday, the Lions and Suns, he managed to take out the double, the DraftKings and the Draft Stars double, as it say. So I'll just bring up his DraftKings team here. He won that with a $2,000 win plus second, I do believe. Players such as Cameron, McPherson, McCluggage. He got away with Archie Smith and the ruckman there. That's a pretty good-looking team there.
Yeah, and I think this will show when you throw to the Draft Stars team as well. There's 2 favourite players I reckon he's got at the moment. One is Charles Cameron, who just put on an absolute clinic. And the other is back from Oblivion, Mitch Robinson, who's been hopeless all year. Put it mildly, bobs up with a nice 80. So there was a couple of keys to that team there for Brody. And, he's put on a clean the last couple of nights. Brody, just killing it.
Killing it. I mean, here's his Draft Stars team there. First and second as well. As I said, Charlie Cameron. Eric Hipwood actually had a good game. But, that's an absolute Brisbane stack if I've ever seen one.
731, that's a mighty score to beat on that slate. I wouldn't have thought there'd be anyone on the site who would have got more than that, would there, Smatho?
I think there was one particular player who managed to score a little bit more than 731 on last night.
What did you get last night, Smatho?
737.
737. And for those who don't know, Smatho won the fiver and won the mini like an absolute champion. Now, I assume you put a few teams in, Smatho, and didn't want to put them all in the main because it would have cost you a bit too much money. Am I on the right path there?
Yeah, just a single bullet side. I chucked it in the 5 to start with and then went to join more, and I thought, might as well do the micro and the mini and maybe a couple of double ups, and I thought that would be fine.
Did you win the micro?
No, I didn't. No,
right.
BVB won that one.
He must have had a belter of a team.
Yeah. So, no, he didn't put it in the other contests, so, but single bullet beats his 100-odd lineups that he put in, so, yes, it was a cracking win last night. It was a great sweat. And then I got sick after looking at the main contest. It wasn't great. As I mentioned on Twitter, it's actually my first AFL win. Decent win. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I'll pour through the rankings to see if I can find a win for AFL, and I only found one on Moneyball, last year, and that's about it. So,
R.I.P. Well, I've been waiting for you to give yourself the thumbs up, Smatho, and there was the chance, but on to next week.
But
maybe tomorrow night. Let's work out this slate for tomorrow night, and then you can. I've got in trouble before describing how you're going to give yourself your own thumbs, but let's look at tomorrow night and see if you can go back to back at least in the 5.
Hey, it's not about
Oh, he's
me.
not playing tonight, actually.
It's not about me. It's about Broadies getting these 2 thumbs up.
Yeah.
I know it should have been someone else, but
Has Brody won it before? I swear he's had thumbs up before.
maybe last year, maybe early this year, but we can check the tape. But it's well deserved. He's on fire.
You go back to back. You deserve
back
it.
to back and do the double. You're on fire, mate. Well done. All right. Let's look into Friday night footy. So this is Geelong, who are $1.65 taking on the Tigers at $2.25. The spread's just a little 4.5, and the total is a very low 96.5 points. The reason why we've got a low total, it's pretty much going to be raining all day in the Gold Coast area tomorrow. 95% chance of showers, 30 mils predicted, and a bit of wind as well. So it's going to be terrible conditions for the players. As for the site, $60,000 on DraftStars and $5,000 on DraftKings. In team news, Geelong have not brought back Reece Stanley. He's still out with his groin injury. Zach Tui and Asava Radaglia come back in. Josh Jenkins and Zach Gumphrey are not at the side. As for the Tigers, Dylan Grimes, Lambert and Ross are in for Broad, Higgins and Thomas Dow. As always, if you get onto dailyfantasyrankings.com.au and head to our data tools section, it shows that it doesn't look great from paper here for Geelong. Geelong just don't do any fantasy scoring to opposition. They're down the bottom of the league tables there. So with this rain, though, whoever predicted, we can almost throw the tools out the window, or should we keep an eye on this particular match?
Oh, I don't think we can throw them out the window. First, I just want to touch on a couple of things.
Yeah.
I think Geelong are pretty short here. I reckon this rain is going to suit Richmond. We know Richmond love to knock it on and tap it and swarm and whatever else. I don't see why Geelong is necessarily so short. What do you think about that?
Look, their pressure is always around the ground. It's just Geelong like building out a half back or the back line.
They do. I don't think the rain's going to let them do that.
No.
We know that Richmond do give up a lot of uncontested ball and even contested ball. They just don't care. They like to really pounce on the rebound, and I think the conditions definitely suit them there. And yeah, the other point I was going to make is that. Scrap that. I can't even remember what my other point was. But that's the main one. Richmond were the outs. If I was a betting man, I would have something on the Tigers at the prices there.
You're on the dog tomorrow. Very good. You're on the dog. They're usually this time of year Geelong start choking, and then obviously they can be called too slow and stuff like that. Start choking around finals time. So you're on that kind of narrative here, Hef.
No, I don't think it's a choke by any stretch to lose to Richmond. I'd be very surprised if one of these two teams don't win the grand final. There you go. Who else could possibly win apart from these two teams? The West Coast can't win because it's not played in WA. Port Adelaide and Brisbane, two of the greatest myths to be 1-2 we've ever seen. It's just a matter of, especially if Richmond win this, I think they both finish top 4. It's obviously a really different final series this year because we don't. Brisbane and Port might have that home ground advantage, maybe, but like in general, there's going to be a few finals on neutral grounds. But yeah, I think one of these two teams will win, and I think this is going to be a ripper.
Excellent. All right, let's break down this particular match for Daily Fantasy, and as always, we start here with the Rucks. And yeah, we didn't have Reece Stanley last week. He pulled out, and that put a spanner into the Sunday teams with no Geelong Rucks to choose from. But now we have Asava Radaglia. He's back to be the main ruckman for the Cats, and he's going to be going up against Nankervis and Soldo. Look, the wet weather does help out ruckman in terms of amount of stoppages, but does that turn into fantasy points in this particular match?
Yeah, now that was the other point I was going to make, actually. Wet weather, just keep an eye on it's all set up for late outs, especially with Geelong playing. Just keep an eye out. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these teams brought in an extra small, just if that wet weather does eventuate. So be on the watch out for that. Talking rucks, I've got a couple of interesting little stats for you here, Smatho, because Radaglia is the only Cats named in the ruck, the only cat named in the ruck, but Mark Blixar's does do a lot of rucking when they're missing Stanley or Fort. But I was just looking at the centre bounce figures from these two guys rucked together for 2 games earlier in the year before Stanley came back. The first time Radaglia attended 58%, Blixar was 42%. And then the second time when they came up against Nick Natanui, Radaglia took 92% of those centre bounces with just 8% for Blixar. So the thing to note about those is Radaglia will take that bounce. He'll often tend to roam forward, and then Blixars will take over a lot more around the ground. Just to confuse you even more, though, that game was his highest score of the year, Radaglia. He had a 66, and he was subsequently dropped because a few of those points led to turnovers to the Eagles when they came over the top of them. All that said, we can play Radaglia as a forward, and I think if there's a lot of rain, I think that's a very reasonable option. At 8,000, he's only got to get you 50-odd to be pretty happy. He's shown he can do that. I think it's going to be hard for him scoring when he's up forward, but if he does take the lion's share of those centre bounces at least, then 50 is a pretty gettable score for him. In terms of the Richmond rucks, I lean to Nankervis just because I think he's got a higher ceiling. I think he's proven that, especially when he had 118 a couple of months ago. But yeah, in general, I'm not really that taken either way.
I'm just looking at Nankervis last week. He also had a 32, 16 headouts and 1 kick against the Freo. Usually Nankervis is a pretty good clearance player. Like he's not afraid to get down dirty in terms of that. So I would probably put that score in the bin and probably trust Nankervis. At 9.8, that's a pretty good price.
You're talking Nankervis or Soldo there? Did you see what Soldo had last week?
Yeah, 32 as well.
32 as well.
But he had 7 possessions, and Nankervis only had 1 kick.
Yeah, there's a bit more. I think there's more upside for Nankervis. He is a pretty good tackler when he's on his game. You'll see he's got games in there of 6 tackles and 7 tackles when he's had his 2 best scores of the year. So if it is wet, he can capitalise on that with some strong tackling.
Excellent. All right, let's move on to defence. And the Tigers are number 2 in the league for opposition back scoring in the top 3. So the premium players can score against Tigers. But this Webb's ain't going to help building and rebounding out of defence. So the Tigers, plus you got the Tigers forward pressure in the wet, it's going to kind of squeeze the Cats defenders out of that particular narrative. But there are some good premium options for the defence on this particular slate. Or do we kind of just go down to the value and hopefully get some cheapies?
Oh, there's a lot of cheap Cats backs like there always are. I see what you're saying with the weather, but the Cats they still tend to play that sort of chipping style in the wet. I've been called out a couple of times avoiding playing their linking backs when I should have, and because of possible wet conditions, and they just do it anyway. The first one I really want to take note of here is Blixars, which we mentioned just then in the rucks. He's probably going to do a lot of work around the ground. He's obviously got a huge tank. He's actually quite a good tackler, so the wet weather probably suits him there. The wet weather also would create more stoppages than usual, so if he's the guy around the ground, he's going to get himself into those ruck contests. I think he is my favourite play for sure of the backs here. And you look at I think he's going to be really popular because you look at his last 8 outings, he hasn't gone below 62. So that 11.7 price tag, he seems a really safe play on this slate to me.
What about anyone cheaper below Blixarves? You mentioned Cats here. You've got O'Connor, Buse, Kolodashny, Taylor, Henry. I mean, we'd be probably plugging one of these guys in to save money.
I think there's not a great array of cheaper options. I think you probably end up using one of these guys quite a lot. Mark O'Connor is the guy who has the highest score out of these, but there was a bit of a blue moon, 84 back in early August. Jed Buse is an interesting one. He's gone over 55 games in a row, which is a bit unheard of for Jed Buse, and he's still there at 8,000. whether that makes him a bit overowned because, well, he's still Jet Buse after all. But he's probably my pick of those. I'm not really keen on Harry Taylor at all. College Asney I can never catch. Jack Henry I really struggle to catch as well. But yeah, they're all about the same as each other, I think. Lockie Henderson's an interesting one. He's got a bit more upside. He's a bit more pricey, but he does seem to be getting involved in a lot of these plus sixes when they're switching play across the back line. So yeah, I'm definitely playing Blixarves, and then I'm just going to make my mind up.
Sure.
I'm
So if
playing
you
a lot of Blixarves.
if you can get to Henderson, I think that's more of a safer play. But then obviously everyone will pile on the Jet Buse, which is, as you've alluded to, it's not exactly fun, really.
No, I've played Jet Buse a fair bit before in my time, and it's never been fun. You're right about that. And what about the thing that makes it hard to play Richmond guys as well is we know Geelong really cut down on uncontested ball in terms of marks and chipping. They really don't give any space at all chipping along around the back line. We've seen it time and time again. So for guys like Hooley and Short and Baker, who really like to just flick it around out the back, I think Geelong do a very good job of cutting that down. And if it rains, that's only going to help them do that more. And Rain is also the other guy, Vlaston. Rain's really going to hurt him because he's a very good intercept mark, and that would really take away one of his major strengths there as well.
All right. Let's move on to the midfield.
Yes, that was clear as mud.
Now, it's pretty clear. You got 4 premium cap players, Duncan, Gumphrey, Dangerfield, Menegola, all over 15k. And the lack of value on this slate means that you can't have them all. You can lucky to get 2 at this stage. And then you got Dustin Martin and Trent Conscion, who's kind of his price has risen up to 12,400. So, yeah, look, it's simple. We might have to keep it simple, target a couple of these cats and hopefully hit the right one, or do we start looking at balanced lineups below 13 or 12k?
Well, yeah, I found this really tricky because let's go through these top cats. If we're talking wet weather, then we're looking for inside. We're not so keen on the outside players. So straight away, Mitch Duncan has been moved out to a flank pretty often this year. So he's pretty consistent, but he does rely a lot on some cheap ball and a lot of junk at the end of games, which we saw him get up to 80, which I think it was 2 games ago. He really junked hard to get to 80, and then last game they gave him a pretty easy time of it near the end against Essendon, and he had not a great second half. So 16-6 in wet conditions. I'm not really interested in Duncan too much, and Menegola falls into a similar bracket. He's in such good form. Like, I don't want to totally hard fade Menegola at all because he's got a massive ceiling, actually. The wet conditions don't suit him, but he just seems to be everywhere. So prefer Menegola just a bit more than Duncan, but I'm still not high on either of them. Now, Dangerfield's the obvious guy, and I think they've got to have him in the guts, but he's just not the same, not quite the same player this year, I don't think, Smatho. Would you agree?
I would agree. Like, there's been times where you see him up forward and you're like, oh, great, he's up there today. But he's improved his fantasy score, and look, he hasn't gone under 86 in his last 5 games. So that's very safe. It's a very safe floor, and obviously these conditions does suit him. You know, tackling, spillage, little handballs out, things like that. And that just accumulates over the game across, half forward, half on the wing and stuff like that. So out of those 4, I would actually probably have Dangerfield. Out of those 4.
I'd have him top as well. I think everyone's going to have him top. That's sort of the key to it. He's going to be, so popular. Like, he always is Dangerfield. He is as it is, but he seems the obvious play to me, which always scares me a little bit. Now, Guth Pig, as I like to call him, has had an unbelievable season. Hasn't been doing that tag. It's gone full circle. He got tagged himself last week.
Yes, he did.
Unheard of. Fair enough if you've got him in your fantasy teams, you think he's a champion, but for someone else to think he's worth tagging, I'm not so sure about that. Coming up against Dusty Martin, does he return to the tagging role that he seems to have lost? I I'm thinking I'm not scared of it, but I think it's in play.
It's a chance. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so,
definitely
and
a chance.
16,000 for the. I love Guthrie, but 16K. Oh, with just that little worry that maybe he goes to Martin. I want to have some, but I don't want to get overboard on Guthrie now. Two guys I'm really interested in, especially in wet conditions, and this is our chance to save some money. Two Richmond Tigers. We've got Jack Graham, who seems to have got a bit of a kick up the date because since he's come back into the side, he's been very consistent. We know he's a very good tackler. At 10,000, I think he is a great spot to save some salary, which we're going to struggle to do. So he's in play for me, and I think the obvious one who's probably going to be really popular is Jack Ross coming back into the team. Very similar mould, good tackler. Last game he had a 65 against Port, which is very reasonable going against a team that doesn't give up a lot of points, and he's sub 9K. So I think these guys are going to be pretty popular, but I think they are really well placed.
Yeah, outside the rucks, I reckon Ross will be the most popular player on the slate. Just to jam in two Cats options, you have to play Ross. It's impossible to do so. So good luck, Mr. Ross. Hopefully you play well. Now let's move on to the forwards, and geez, God, there's some dual position players here. There's so many. You talked about Parfitt, and Dangerfield's here as well. Lambert, Shai Bolton, he's going pretty well. I'm not sure how he goes against this Cats lineup. So can we get contrarian by finding a guy who doesn't have a mid tag on him, or just suck it up and find some good midfielders in this forward line?
Yeah, who can we bob up cheap? I looked over this a number of times trying to find a cheap guy, and none really popped up to me. Obvious guys that people are going to look at here are Parfitt. We've spoken ad nauseum about him in wet conditions. Great tackler, forward status, gets a lot of time in the middle of the ground. Just having a look at his centre bounce numbers. He's in basically every second centre bounce. So he's an obvious guy, but he hasn't shown that ceiling this year. He hasn't gone over 79 since the first couple of rounds of the year. So I think he's pretty safe, but he's going to be really popular. And if he throws you a 50-something, maybe he's a guy that you can somehow get around. The other guy we talked there about is Shai Bolton. Now, forget one every two bounces for Parfitt. Shai Bolton's just basically in them all. And yeah, he's loving it. So he's been looking at about 10 rounds of 80% plus in the centre bounces, Bolton. And somehow he's remembered to come out after half time lately too. So 11K, it's a really hard matchup for him, but he gets every opportunity. So I think they're two guys that you can wake up for, and they're going to be reasonably safe.
I'm a bit disappointed that Gary Rowan's at 9K. That's a ridiculous price for him.
He's a slate breaker, isn't he, Gary Rowan?
I was going to ask you about Gyron Myers.
Ryan.
10,500. He seems to be a bit of a fantasy producer. At 10,000, I do like him here, but I don't think I'll be able to get to him. Would that be a good contrarian guy to get in?
Well, he's definitely got the upside that he can get you 70 odd at that 10K, and he's always going to be pretty low owned, especially on this sort of slate. He does have that role where he gets on the opposite side of where the balls come in, and they do tend to use him coming out of the back 50 a fair bit, Myers. So he's not just your typical goal sneak. He can get up the ground and get involved that way. So he's always playable, Myers, because he's never over-owned, and he can get you a decent score around that salary. And
the last player I want to touch on tonight is the Tomahawk at $14,000 on Draft Stars. Look, if you got to do some radar watching tomorrow and you're finding out there's actually clear conditions, could he be in play? But geez, that price tag in terms of all other guys in the slate, he's going to be super low owned.
He's the contrarian play from hell, isn't he, Tom Hawkins? just in unbelievable form now. They're a little bit susceptible to that really big forward, Richmond, especially if he starts to get up the ground. His form in wet conditions is better than what you may think. But 14,500, gee whiz. It's very hard to play much Tom Hawkins, but if you think that everyone's doing that, you could roll the dice, I guess. But
all right, so final thoughts here. Double ruck stacks in play?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that there, but that's definitely in play. He's probably the best cheaper forward there is there, Radagalier, isn't he?
Yeah.
At 8.3, definitely in play. I'm actually thinking, well, we can't call it a triple ruck stack, but in theory, it's a bit of a triple ruck stack. If I'm super keen to play Blixars in the backs, Radagalier in the forwards, give yourself some stiffy bloody Richmond ruck, and just sit there all night barracking for stoppages. Throw a few inside mids around the ball. Graham, Ross. That's going to be a really popular way to play, isn't it? That's my first thought of how I want to attack it. I think, oh Christ, everyone's going to be doing that.
Yeah, everyone's going to do that. So right now I've put in Radagalier, Ross, Blitzcars and Nankervis, and you've got 12,200 left per player for the last 5 positions. So by the time you whack in Parfitt in your forward line, you've still got 12k left. Yeah, it's going to be a chalky build. So
we've talked about this before. You can go chalky if you make sure you've got 1 or 2 guys who aren't. So you want to go super chalky, throw Tom Hawkins in there, or throw bloody Jack. Well, those. Don't go with the obvious imbues. Throw in a Jack Henry or throw in a Harry Taylor and hope for a miracle. You've got to differentiate yourself somewhere, and if you're so set on the popular way being correct, you've got to get yourself away from the rest of the field somehow. So, yeah, just throw a random player in for something to do. Get your favourite 8 team, and then just throw a bloke in you'd never think to play and no one else is, and yeah, just hope for the best. One of my best ever wins, actually, Smatho. I played Mark Bagley in Essendon versus GWS when it was a target contest.
Yep.
The target hadn't gone off, and they paid the top however many.
Oh, the top 10. Yes, I remember that one. 10. Yes.
And I had this team I loved, and the only bloke left to fit was Mark Bagley. I think he kicked 4 out of a forward pocket, just the most freakish thing you've ever seen. But that was the way of differentiating the team. I don't claim any skill. It was just how sometimes you just got to put yourself there to have the gods look favourably on you.
Geez, Hef's going down memory lane. I remember that because that was the changeover DraftStars platforms.
That's it. Yeah.
Yep, they had to get rid of all their money.
Mark Bagley just out of nowhere. I don't think I ever played him in my life, but yeah, that was happy days. That's probably my last win, actually.
I was going to say, look at you now. Now, Hef and I will be back next week to break down round 18 of the AFL. We might see if we can sneak in a couple of more games next week, being a traditional more fixture. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. So make sure it's there. Make sure you click on the link for the SportChamps tournament. $20, free hit. No brainer there. And make sure you get it to dailyfantasyrankings.com.au for all of your DFS needs here in Australia. Hef, it's been a great show tonight, mate. Thank you for rubbing in my win last night.
Even better, the Eagles are still 2 goals up here at 3/4 time. So,
lovely.
Yes.
Oh, look who's in the cash again with my single bullet. This is looking pretty good. All right.
Did you put this one in the main?
I have got it in the main tonight. It's currently in 200th place.
Oh, wow.
Currently winning $39. So hopefully that hangs on. All right. We'll wrap things up there. Thanks for joining us on the DFR Down Under show, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks, Hef.
Thanks, mate. See you later.
Cheers.